A 16-year-old black girl stood silently by the airport gate. A flight attendant shouted in her face, right in front of dozens of people. No one came to her defense. But with just one phone call, one of the largest airline conglomerates in America began to collapse, layer by layer, piece by piece, with no way to stop it. Early morning at Sterling International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the United States. The crowds moved like a weaving loom. The sound of rolling suitcases echoed across the stone floors. The PA announcements droned on in a robotic rhythm, and the scent of fresh coffee blended with the luxurious perfumes from duty-free shops. But amidst that bustling scene, right near Gate 42, there was a strange stillness. A young girl stood still, clutching her backpack tightly to her chest, her eyes fixed on the electronic board as if silently reciting each letter to herself. Belle Jenkins, 16 years old, wore a faded blue hoodie, black jeans worn at the knees, and sneakers patched more times than one could count. She didn't draw attention. She wasn't in anyone's way. She stood about 2 steps from the waiting seats, close enough to hear the boarding announcements, but far enough not to block anyone's path. She wasn't in the first-class section, but she hadn't stepped into it either. She simply stood right at the boundary. And that boundary was exactly what made people uncomfortable. The sharp click of high heels echoed in rapid succession. A woman's voice rang out, loud and cutting like a blade. "You! Stop right there!" Heads turned. Conversations halted. Laptop keys stopped tapping. Wide, puzzled eyes, full of curiosity, locked onto the scene. A flight attendant in a crisp navy uniform strode quickly toward her. Her eyes were sharp, her lips pressed into a blade-like line, clipboard tapping against her palm. On her polished name badge gleamed the words, Colleen Briggs. "This is the first-class area. You're not allowed to stand here. The economy is behind you. If you don't show me your ticket, I'll call security." Her voice rang out like a loudspeaker, loud enough for everyone in the front row to hear. Men in suits, women holding Chanel handbags, all fell silent, eyes fixed on the slender girl standing still. Belle said nothing. She took a small step back, trying to make herself smaller in the space. Her cheeks burned. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, but this time something felt different. She opened her mouth to respond, but Colleen continued. "I won't repeat myself. Where's your ticket? Show it or leave." No one spoke. No one stepped in. A man sitting nearby, Grant Peters, a financial consultant, frowned slightly, but kept his eyes on his laptop screen. A middle-aged woman, Janice Monroe, a retired teacher, bit her lip, eyes uneasy. But no one moved. None of them knew that within minutes everything would shift. Belle closed her eyes briefly. Her hands trembled slightly. But instead of pulling out a ticket, she pulled out an old flip phone. Not a smartphone, no camera, just a single speed dial button. She pressed the button. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. A calm male voice answered on the other end. Belle said just 4 words. "It's happening again." No elaboration, no tears, no explanations. She closed the phone and slipped it back into her pocket. Colleen raised an eyebrow. She smirked, thinking she had won. "Just as I thought," she muttered, turning away triumphantly. But what she didn't know was that she had just triggered a shockwave. No one knew. No one expected it. But the ripple had already begun from that exact moment. 50 miles away, inside a towering glass skyscraper in the heart of the city, a landline phone rang in an office on the 39th floor. A man in his 60s, silver hair neatly trimmed, eyes cold as steel, picked up the phone. No one called him a CEO. No one called him a manager. They called him Leonard Walsh, strategic silent shareholder of Crestline Airways. After hearing the 4-word message from the other end, he gave a single command: "Activate emergency protocol today." Back at Gate 42, Belle sat down, hugging her backpack, her eyes fixed on her worn-out shoes. She didn't know she'd just toppled a domino chain. She only knew one thing: she wasn't afraid anymore. Colleen continued her duties as if nothing had happened, a hint of condescension in her gaze, a touch of smugness at having upheld the rules. But around her, things began to shift subtly, but undeniably. A young airport staff member behind the boarding counter quietly took out his phone. He sent a short video, the scene of Colleen berating Belle, to an internal group chat. No caption. The recipient, Deborah Lane, head of customer relations. She read the message and shot up from her chair in the middle of a team meeting. "We have a problem, a big one." 10 minutes later, a group of 3 people in black suits appeared at Gate 42. A tall woman with her hair neatly pinned walked straight toward Belle. Her name badge read, Camilla Rodess, Vice President of Customer Experience. Colleen hesitated, a flicker of worry crossing her face, but she still smiled politely. "Is something wrong?" Camilla didn't look at her. She walked directly to Belle and said, "Miss Jenkins, are you all right?" Belle gave a small nod, staying silent. Camilla turned to Colleen. "Miss Briggs, step back." Immediately, Colleen froze. The 2 men behind Camilla moved forward. One opened a black leather folder bearing the Crestline Airways logo. His face was expressionless. Camilla turned to the gathering crowd. "We apologize for the incident. The company will take immediate action." Colleen was asked to leave the area. No handcuffs, no harsh words. But every single eye in the terminal had now shifted from Belle to her, and no one defended Colleen. At that moment, Belle felt it, that slow-moving wave radiating from exactly where she stood. It wasn't a loud protest. It wasn't a violent retaliation. It was a whisper stronger than any scream. Enough. If something is stirring in you right now, don't let it pass. Like this video to hold on to this moment. Comment on your first impression of Belle, and subscribe if you believe justice sometimes begins with the quietest things. The clock on the wall in the executive office on the 42nd floor ticked steadily, but no one paid attention. Outside, passengers continued lining up for check-in as if everything were business as usual. But inside the internal control center of Crestline Airways, that sense of normalcy was rapidly unraveling. Douglas Reeves, head of executive security, paced like a caged tiger. A headset pressed to his ear, he barked orders repeatedly. Who authorized the executive delegation to show up directly at the boarding gate? No clearance? No security? A young assistant at the computer desk raised his hand, voice urgent. "You need to see this. Right now." Douglas rushed over. The screen displayed a video that was spreading like wildfire. Footage of Colleen Briggs shouting in Belle Jenkins' face, her voice sharp, laced with contempt. Over 300,000 views, just 18 minutes after being uploaded. This was no longer a minor incident. Meanwhile, in the upper floor conference room, Peter Collins, the director of communications, sat frozen before the glaring headline on a major news outlet. Crestline flight attendant screams at black teen unknowingly, the niece of the airline's co-founder. Peter grabbed his phone and called Brian Holt, CEO of Crestline. "I know you hate being interrupted, but we're on fire." Brian Holt, a tall man with a square face and bald head, known for his cold demeanor and refusal to bow to the press, felt his hand tremble slightly as he held up the iPad showing the video. A black girl stood silently, saying nothing, yet the world was roaring behind her. "Niece? Of who?" Brian growled through clenched teeth. Peter answered softly but clearly. "Eleanor Jenkins." The air of the room froze over like ice. Eleanor Jenkins, a name no one in the corporation dared utter unless necessary. The woman who was once the soul of the airline, long retired. Yet everyone knew she had never truly relinquished power. No one knew exactly how many shares she controlled through shell companies, but everyone understood. If she wanted to, she could bring Crestline to its knees with a single nod. In a small office adjacent to the VIP lounge, Belle sat silently in a leather chair. She didn't know the names being thrown around upstairs. She didn't know about the storm brewing on the upper floors, but she could sense it, instinctively, that something was shifting. Camilla Rhodes sat beside her, phone buzzing nonstop. Internal messages flooded in. Directives from upstairs came one after another, disjointed and urgent. Move Belle Jenkins to a private room. Keep all media away from her. No staff is to speak to the press. Wait for further instructions from Leonard. A sharp ding echoed in the emergency boardroom on the 39th floor. A freshly printed report landed on the table. At the top was a screenshot collage of dozens of complaints about racial discrimination by Crestline staff over the past 5 years, all marked either resolved internally or closed without follow-up. One director gasped, "We've known about this for years. Why wasn't it addressed?" Another laughed dryly. "Because we thought no one would see. No one would ever stand up." On the ground floor, passengers began murmuring as Flight 317 to Boston was suddenly canceled. No clear explanation. No announcement from the pilot. Then Flight 220 to Chicago. Then 3 more flights. People pulled out their phones looking for updates. And they found the video. Furious tweets. Online forums are calling for a boycott. Hashtags are spreading like wildfire. Dickipicidis justice for Belle. Boycott Crestline. Respect is not optional. At a cafe in the terminal, Grant Peters sipped his espresso while reading the news on his phone, sweat beading despite the frigid air conditioning. "We've just witnessed the first tremors of an empire collapsing," he said, not looking up. Janice Monroe, the middle-aged woman across from him, was still trying to grasp the situation. How does one girl, one shout, lead to all this? Grant looked at her, seriously, for the first time. Because that shout wasn't alone. It resonated with thousands of others who had been silenced before, and this time, people didn't look away. Far away in the glass tower where Leonard Walsh was in a closed-door meeting, phones rang nonstop, partners were pulling out, investment funds demanded explanations, reporters flooded in. Leonard stood up, turned to the window, and looked down at the city slowly waking up after the shock. He pulled out his phone, dialed a familiar number. Initiate emergency protocol. Cancel the merger deal. Activate the contingency liquidation package. And... He paused, voice firm. Prepare for an early shareholders meeting. Back in the private room, Belle sat quietly, listening to the distant roar of an airplane taking off outside the thick window glass. Camilla stepped forward and gently placed her hand on Belle's shoulder. "You're not alone. No matter what happens next, you're not alone." Belle said nothing. She simply nodded, fingers gripping the strap of her backpack tightly. In her mind, 100 questions spun without answers. How far will this go? What will they do to cover it up? Am I strong enough to stand through this? And if the truth keeps getting buried, will anyone dare to speak up again? The executive meeting room on the 17th floor, where Belle had been brought, was designed to impress. Glass walls overlooking the runway, thick smoky gray carpet, a long conference table with sleek black leather chairs. But today, though sunlight still poured through the panes, the space felt as cold as a morgue. Belle Jenkins sat alone at the head of the table, backpack resting at her feet. She wasn't slumped forward like she had been earlier, no longer curled inward like that morning. Her gaze was still heavy, but steady. In her eyes was a weight no one in the room had anticipated. The door opened. A line of executives entered, moving briskly, but with just enough restraint to betray the tremble beneath their professionalism. Russell Denton, Vice President of Legal Affairs at Crestline, renowned for his always steel voice, spoke today with a throat raspy and breathless. Walking beside him was Monica Reyes, Director of Communications, clutching a tablet as though it were her only shield against the storm that loomed. Following closely was Camilla Rhodes, and at the rear, Garrett Moore, Regional Director for the West, his eyes fixed on the floor, as if calculating every possible exit. Russell sat down, placed both hands on the table, and forced a smile. "Miss Jenkins, first, allow us to offer our deepest apologies for your experience this morning." Belle said nothing. No nod, no glance of acknowledgement, just silence, heavy, measured, sharp as a blade slicing through the air. Russell swallowed hard and continued. "What happened is unacceptable. It goes against every core value our company stands for. We are committed to conducting a thorough investigation and holding all involved accountable." Belle tilted her head slightly, her voice no louder than a breath. "How? A 2-hour ethics workshop and a signed acknowledgement form?" Russell froze. Monica looked as if she might interject, but Garrett raised a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. Then Camilla Rhodes spoke, for the first time sounding genuinely sincere. "Belle, I saw the way they looked at you this morning, the way they turned away. And I'm sorry for being one of them for years, not just today." A pause settled over the room. Belle held Camilla's gaze for one breath longer than expected. "I don't need an apology," she said. "I need a change." Just then the door swung open. A young assistant rushed in, pale-faced, clutching a trembling tablet which he handed to Monica. She looked down and instinctively raised a hand to her mouth. Russell grabbed the device, scanning the bold headline. Leaked. Crestline Airways suppressed over 400 discrimination complaints in the past 5 years. Internal memos revealed deliberate cover-ups. Russell was speechless. Monica's hands shook as she flipped through screenshots, emails from regional supervisors, notes from the legal department, verbal orders from department heads, all confirming a grim, undeniable truth. Crestline had a system in place, purposeful and strategic, for silencing voices. Garrett Moore whispered, Who leaked this?" Monica answered, her voice cracking, "It doesn't matter anymore. It's too late." Inside the media control room on the 5th floor, a technician scrambled to verify the system's security. But the file-sharing link had already spread across forums, reposted by dozens of human rights groups, independent journalists, and worst of all, politicians amid heated congressional campaigns. Belle remained seated. No smile, no anger. "You think this is just about a flight attendant yelling in my face?" she said, her voice still soft but razor-sharp. "This empire has grown used to apologizing at the right time, to regret, to press statements and move on as if nothing ever went wrong. But today—" She stood, eyes locked on Russell. "The mask has slipped, and no one believes your clean face anymore." The room went still, not because no one could argue back, but because they all knew she was right. A buzz from Monica's phone broke the silence. She looked down and saw a call from Leonard Walsh. No one answered. No one dared. Russell turned in his chair to face Belle, desperate to regain some control. "Miss Jenkins, if you're willing to keep this internal, the company is prepared to offer support, a suitable compensation package, an honorary scholarship in your name, a media campaign to reaffirm our commitment to equality. You're trying to buy my silence, Belle interrupted. Russell faltered. Garrett Moore lowered his head. Monica looked at no one. Belle walked slowly toward the door. Just before leaving, she turned back and addressed the entire Crestline executive board. You're not afraid of the truth. You're afraid of losing power because of the truth. But once it's out there, no amount of money, no number of signed pledges can restore the respect you've already lost. She stepped out, without looking back, and behind her an empire began to crack, not from criticism, but from a truth that could no longer be denied. On her way out of the conference room, Belle received an anonymous message. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. We've been watching. Are you ready to take this bigger? She stopped in her tracks, eyes widening. Someone, or perhaps a group, had been watching from the shadows all along. This fight might be bigger than she ever imagined. The message remained on Belle's phone screen. You're not the first, you won't be the last. We've been watching. Are you ready to take this bigger? She reread every line, every word, as if hearing a voice echoing from within herself. No phone number, no name, just a message from unknown. And more terrifying than anything was its chilling accuracy. In Camilla Rodessa's private office, one floor below, the door was shut. No assistants, no managers, no cameras, only Belle, sitting across from the one woman in the entire Crestline hierarchy who had dared to place a hand on her shoulder and say, You're not alone. Camilla leaned forward, hands clasped, voice dropping low. There are things. I'm not allowed to ask, but I believe you've received something, a contact, a message? Belle didn't respond. She simply looked straight at the woman across from her, eyes unwavering. Camilla gave a tired smile. I received a message like that once, 12 years ago. I was still a junior employee watching as a flight attendant was stripped of her badge in front of everyone for daring to report a manager for harassment. I didn't respond. Silence filled the room. Are you going to respond? Camilla asked. Belle gripped her phone tightly. She wasn't sure. That night Belle was moved to a private hotel on the outskirts of town, not arranged by the airline, but at the request of Belle Jenkins. Victor Hale, Eleanor's advisor, was the one who escorted her there. No small talk, no comforting words. He simply opened the door, checked the room's security, and stood guard in the hallway like a shadow. Belle sat alone by the window. Below, the night street stretched out under a soft golden glow, lined with trees. No airport, no judgmental stares. But the echoes of the day still thundered in her head, like the roar of a jet engine that hadn't fully died down. She opened her phone. The message was still there. Are you ready to take this bigger? This time she replied with one word, yes. 10 minutes later the phone rang. No caller ID, no name, just a deep, smooth, oddly calm male voice. Belle Jenkins. You've just stepped through a door you can't return from. I'm not going back, she replied. Good, the voice said, because what's coming will require courage most people don't possess. She could hear the faint sound of typing on a keyboard in the background. We are the Lumen Project, an independent organization, non-governmental, non-media, not beholden to shareholders or donors. We gather truth, but not to display it, to act on it. And you, Belle Jenkins, have become a symbol, whether you like it or not, for something the world needs to see. Belle took a deep breath. So what do you want? We have evidence. Hundreds of hours of internal Crestline recordings, hidden cameras, buried compensation contracts. But to release it, We need a face, a living witness, someone the public already wants to believe in. Someone like you. Belle didn't respond right away. She stood and walked toward the mirror. Her reflection looked back at her, slim frame, curly hair slightly tousled, dark circles under her eyes. Nothing that screamed spokesperson. Nothing heroic. "I'm not a hero," she whispered. "I just don't want to be screamed at anymore." The voice on the other end softened. "It's those who don't see themselves as heroes, who keep the truth from being twisted." The next morning, Belle was taken to a sealed room inside a nondescript building. No logos, no signage. She didn't sign anything, no contracts. Just a large screen on which played clips, one after another. A security guard shoving a black passenger out of the boarding area. A manager laughing while reviewing a report about a passenger who didn't fit the brand image. An audio recording. "As long as they don't make a big scene, just let them board and forget about it. It's not our problem." Belle's chest tightened. Not because she was surprised, but because she knew this wasn't an exception. It was a system. The man's voice returned. "You just need to confirm these are real, that they connect to your own experience, and that you're ready to face what comes next." Belle turned and asked, "Face what? The press? The company? Or the people who will say I just want attention?" The voice paused. "Face yourself. Because when the truth is spoken aloud, it strips away every last illusion." When Belle stepped out of that room, Victor was waiting by the car. He said nothing, just asked gently, "Have you decided?" She nodded. "I'll speak." Back at Eleanor Jenkins' private home, the sky had already darkened. The old house, with slate roofing and a garden of lavender, carried a calming scent. Eleanor sat at a tea table, the soft lighting casting her face like an old portrait. She looked up as Belle entered, eyes full of understanding. "You've chosen the hardest road." Belle sat down. "I'm not sure I can endure it for long." Eleanor placed her hand over Belle's. "You don't need to endure it forever, just long enough for another door to open." That night Belle lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. She thought about something no one had yet asked. If I become a symbol, will I still be me? 6:59 a.m. 1 minute before the video goes live. Belle sat alone in the temporary office on the top floor of a private hotel. She wore a black hoodie, her hair tied back, her eyes bare of makeup, and her hands trembling slightly as they hovered over the keyboard. In front of her was the final draft of the first video, filmed the night before. One take, no editing, no script, no director, just a single camera, and the truth. Victor stood a few steps away, silent. He didn't need to speak. No one needed to guide Belle anymore. From the moment she said, "I'll speak," everything had begun to move, like a train that could no longer be stopped. She took a long breath. Pressed post. 7 a.m. The video was published on the official platform managed by the Lumen Project, simultaneously shared by human rights organizations, lawyers, and independent journalists. Social media shook. 7:04 a.m. Hashtag #, Belle Jenkins. Truth hit the trending list. The opening line read, "I didn't want to become a symbol. I just wanted to live without being yelled at for the color of my skin." In the video, Belle sat in a simple room, natural light filtering over her shoulder, casting her face in raw honesty and fatigue. She didn't speak loudly. She wasn't angry. She simply told her story. About Gate 42, about Colleen Briggs, about the stares from those around her, about the feeling of being called by the wrong name inside your own body. She ended with a sentence. "I'm not asking for applause. I just hope no one ever has to call and say, 'It's happening again.'" 8:02 a.m. The Guardian and the Washington Post featured the video. Headlines reading, "Belle Jenkins breaks silence with dignity." The online community rallied. Human rights groups voiced support. But then, something else began to rise from beneath the surface. 9:15 a.m. A rebuttal video aired on a right-wing news network. The host, a familiar TV face, opened in a mocking tone. "So now, one black teen gets misidentified and we're ready to burn down a 65-year-old company." At the same time, anonymous accounts posted photos of Belle in a hoodie, old shoes, standing near the first-class line, with captions implying, "Did she stage the shock herself?" Comments began to divide. "She's the bravest person I've ever seen." "This is a PR stunt backed by someone." "How many people lost their jobs because of this video?" "There's an organization behind her." "She doesn't speak for me." 11 a.m. Belle sat in a meeting room with Eleanor, Victor, and Camilla. Phones buzzed relentlessly. Messages from strangers, emails from journalists, threats, and support. Camilla placed her hand gently on the table and said, "This is the moment you'll learn. The truth is rarely welcomed with flowers." Eleanor closed her eyes. She'd seen this before, many times. The crowd will love you, as long as you make them feel good. But when you force them to face what they've long ignored, they'll push back. Victor added bluntly, "If you want to stop now, no one will blame you." Belle shook her head. "No. I didn't speak up to be liked. I spoke so the truth wouldn't keep getting swept under the rug." 1:20 p.m. A national network requested a live interview with Belle, proposing an 8 p.m. primetime slot. Belle stayed silent for a few seconds. "If you go live," Victor warned, "they'll throw everything at you." Eleanor looked at her niece, her eyes firm yet kind. "You may not change their minds, but you can change the silence." Belle gave a faint smile. "Then I'll speak. One more time." 6 p.m. The makeup room at the broadcast station was not glamorous. White lights, large mirror, wooden table. Belle sat there silently staring at herself. On her left wrist, a faint scar. From a bike accident when she was 12. It was visible under the bright lights. No one else noticed, but she did. "I wasn't born to do this," she thought. "But if not me, then who?" 8 p.m. The broadcast began. The camera panned to Belle. The host greeted the audience, then turned to her. First question. "Do you think what you've done has caused thousands of people to lose their jobs?" Belle looked straight into the camera. Her voice didn't waver. "I think thousands of people stayed silent for far too long while injustice unfolded in front of them. And today, the world is paying the price for that silence." After the show, as Belle exited the studio, Victor handed her a paper envelope, no return address. Inside was a faded photo. A young Eleanor Jenkins standing beside a group of civil rights protesters. On the back, handwritten, "Truth is legacy. You're not the first in this family to rise." Do you think speaking the truth is simple, or is it the very thing that makes you feel most alone? Leave a comment below to share your thoughts. And if Belle's journey feels like it's touching something deeper than just injustice, subscribe to walk with her to the very end of this fight. 3:48 a.m. Inside Eleanor's secure residence, everything was still. But Victor's phone screen kept glowing. Messages, internal alerts, urgent emails. A new leak had surfaced. Not from independent media, not from supporters, but from Crestline Airways' own emergency PR office. The counterattack had officially begun. 6:17 a.m. Fox Business Morning, a news show sponsored by a corporation with indirect shares in Crestline, aired a special investigation. Belle Jenkins, the hidden truth. Suspicious academic record, ties to a shadowy organization, suspended from her previous school for rule violations. Who is she? Images were edited and rearranged. Belle with her head down in class. Belle debating in student council. Belle in a hoodie standing alone. None of it is illegal, not unethical. But in the hands of skilled manipulators, everything could be branded disruptive. 7 a.m. The story spread like a viral fever. Dozens of fake accounts, anonymous bots, and even some influencers began sharing questions. Are we being played? Why didn't anyone check this girl's background before making her a hero? If she had prior issues, how can we believe anything she says? A flood of comments poured in under Belle's original video. She just wants fame. Can't trust someone who looks like they scripted the whole thing. At this rate, anyone can fake a story to get on TV. Belle sat in the living room, eyes glued to the screen, reading every line, not to argue, but to understand. The crowd's fury wasn't truly about her. It was about their fear of being dragged out of their comfort zone. 9:43 a.m. Victor and Eleanor called an emergency meeting. Camilla Rhodes walked in, tossing a folder onto the table. Cressline just signed a deal with a crisis comms firm, $2 million. They're not putting out fires anymore. They want to burn back. Victor scowled. We have to respond. Eleanor shook her head, firm. No, we don't play their game. Responding is the trap. Anything Belle says now will be labeled defensive. Silence fell. Belle asked one question. So what do we do? Eleanor looked at her, eyes resolute. We wait. Wait for what? Belle frowned. Wait for them to cross the line. 11:10 a.m. An anonymous email was sent to all federal legal partners. Attached is the recording of Cressline's internal Shut Down Belle campaign meeting. The attachment was an audio file. In it, a Cressline. We don't need to prove she's wrong. We just need people to feel she might be. Noon. News of the leaked recording began to spread. This time not from the Lumen Project, but from someone inside Crestline. A senior figure choosing betrayal over going down with the ship. The online tide turned. She's telling the truth. I was humiliated at gate 38 too and told to stay quiet. Crestline canceled my flight once for suspicious behavior. No explanation. It's time they answered for all of it. 2:07 p.m. Victor received a strange email. No sender address, just one line. Lumen has a traitor. Check internal meeting on May 2nd. He frowned, accessed the Lumen Project's archive, and reviewed the most recent internal meeting. Every member confirmed the files hadn't been shared, but somewhere in a shadowy corner of social media, someone had just posted a clip. Belle, sitting in Lumen's review room, watching evidence, wiping away tears. The content wasn't false, but the context had been stripped. The caption beneath reads, If you have to rewatch your pain to remind yourself you're a victim, can you be trusted? 3:30 p.m. Belle and the Lumen Project went into full alert. Victor urgently convened the internal board. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, then said, We have a rat in the house. 4:20 p.m. At a cafe near Midtown, a red-haired woman wearing sunglasses sat across from a stranger. She slid a USB stick across the table. Said nothing. The man nodded. You've done well. The agreed sum will be transferred shortly. She stood, walked away, never looking back. But his voice called after her. We don't need to destroy her. We just need her to fade. 6 p.m. Belle sat in an armchair, lights off. Only the faint blue glow of her laptop lit her face. Eleanor entered, placing a cup of tea on the table. You can take a step back. People will understand. Belle shook her head. I'm not afraid of being hated. Then what are you afraid of? Eleanor asked. Belle paused for a while, then said, I'm afraid of disappearing, before I've done anything worth being remembered for. Just then Victor entered the meeting room, holding a printed report. He laid it on the table. Unauthorized access to Belle's video. Name, Camilla Rhodes, 6:03 a.m. Victor stood outside the office door, holding a report from Lumen's internal system. His eyes scanned the line, cold as ice. Access breach log. Unauthorized export of video file. ID, CR42. Logged IP, rhodeses.c@lumen-sec.org. He couldn't believe it. Camilla Rhodeses. The woman who had once walked into a chaotic airport placed a hand on Belle's shoulder and said, You are not alone. The only person from the old system who had dared to speak up, who had stood between riot police and public outrage. Now she was the one who had exposed Belle to the fire of public scrutiny, defenseless. 8:21 a.m. Eleanor sat silently by the window, reading the incident summary. Victor paced behind her like a caged panther. We need to confront her, he said. We need to understand first, Eleanor replied. Sometimes the betrayer carries the oldest wounds. 10 a.m. Camilla arrived 15 minutes late for the emergency meeting. She walked in, still polished, still bearing the composure of a seasoned executive. But her eyes had changed. Gone was the calm glow. In its place, endurance. Victor handed her the report. No preamble. This is evidence that you leaked Belle's internal footage to Crestline. Camilla took it, glanced at it for a few seconds. No denial, no excuse. She simply said, I knew it would come back to me. Then why did you do it? Victor snapped. Camilla took a deep breath. Because they didn't just threaten me. Silence fell. Who did they threaten? Eleanor asked. Camilla swallowed hard. For the first time her eyes cracked. My sister. She's undergoing cancer treatment at a private hospital owned by Crestline. If I didn't cooperate, her insurance would be cut. Her treatment stopped. They sent me photos of her hospital bed. They gave me two options, stay silent or help them. Belle entered the room. No announcement. No one stopped her. She already knew. She stood there facing Camilla, not with rage, not with tears. I trusted you, Belle said. I know, Camilla whispered, and I broke that. But not for fame, not for money. She reached into her bag, pulled out a thick envelope and placed it on the table. Inside, a copy of a confidential contract between Crestline and a global PR firm. It stated explicitly, primary objective, discredit the authenticity of Belle Jenkins through visual manipulation, ethical doubt, and emotional fatigue of public opinion. Victor looked at Eleanor. Eleanor looked at Belle. Camilla continued, I may never regain your trust, but I can help you strike at the core of the machine swallowing people whole. And I choose to do that. From the inside. 12:30 p.m. At Lumen's representative office, Victor convened the Strategic Council. He presented two options. Option 1, publicly release Camilla's confession recording, ending her role in the team. Option 2, keep Camilla within the system as a turned insider, using her intel to strike directly at Crestline's media command center. The room fell into silence. No one wanted to make the call. Finally, Eleanor turned to Belle. The decision is yours. Belle looked toward the window. Gray skies. Rain was drizzling through every sliver of glass. She said nothing for a full minute, then turned back, voice calm and firm. If we discard everyone who's made a mistake, who's left to stand with us? We keep her, but this time she speaks in front of the camera, not behind the screen. 3 p.m. Camilla entered the recording room. No makeup, no assistant, no script. She sat down, back straight. The light hit the hollows beneath her eyes. She began, "My name is Camilla Rodases. I was once vice president of customer experience at Crestline. I believed I stood for fairness, for the passenger, until I was the one receiving the first threat." She told it all. How Crestline tracked her family. How they created lists of media threats. How they pre-wrote scripts to manipulate public perception. How she was assigned to guide Belle into a soft trap through warm advice and gain trust. At the end of the video, Camilla looked directly into the camera. "If I had to choose between personal safety and justice for a child, I once chose wrong. Today, I choose again." 7 p.m. Camilla's confession video spread like wildfire. Most viewers were shocked. Some were furious. But a quiet wave began to rise. An insider has defected. What if others at Crestline are being threatened too? If there's one Camilla, how many more are silently enduring? Just as the video hit 1 million views, an anonymous email hit Lumen's system. If you think Camilla is the only one of you being controlled, check your internal security logs. The next one won't betray you. The next one will explode from within. Attached, a screenshot of a login activity. From Victor's account. 6:11 a.m. Eleanor's apartment remained cloaked in darkness, with only the soft glow from the kitchen casting a narrow band of golden light. Belle sat at the table, hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea, eyes locked on the tablet screen. The anonymous message from the night before was still there. The next one won't be a traitor. The next one will explode from the inside. Attached login screenshot from account v.hale@lumen-se.org. Victor's account. The one person who had always stood by her. The one person Belle had never doubted. Until now. 8 a.m. Victor arrived as usual. Dark shirt, long coat, confident stride. He placed a small bag of pastries on the table, calm, as if everything was still fine. Belle looked at him, her voice quiet. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Victor hesitated for 1 second, long enough for Belle to know he understood. 8:10 a.m. In the underground meeting room at Lumen headquarters, the internal investigation officially began. Eleanor called a closed meeting, just Belle, Victor, Camilla, and 3 senior coordinators. Chief Coordinator Marcus Lale opened the session in a flat voice. "We've detected a series of unusual logins from Victor Hale's account. Access commands align with the timing of the leaked footage from Belle's review room and Crestline's entire counter-media strategy." Victor didn't deny it. He sat upright, hands clasped before him. "I'm not denying it, but I wasn't the one who sent those files out." Camilla frowned. "Then who did? Anyone else with access to your credentials?" Victor nodded. "Yes, but I can't name them, because if I do, they'll be in more danger than I am." Eleanor's tone turned icy. "You're withholding information in a war where every second bleeds." Victor turned to Belle, his gaze unwavering. "I swear to you, Belle, I never betrayed you. But I did have a covert agreement with someone inside Crestline, not to hurt you, to get you what you needed from the other side." 10:22 a.m. The meeting paused to verify login metadata. Belle stepped out onto the back terrace of headquarters, where the morning sun hadn't yet warmed the misty cold. Camilla followed, holding a cup of cold coffee. "You believe him?" Camilla asked. Belle didn't turn. "I'm not sure. I used to look in the mirror every morning thinking I was doing the right thing, until I saw myself in the leaked video." Camilla paused. "We're not always betrayed by villains, Belle. Sometimes we're betrayed by the people trying to protect us. By hiding the truth." Belle closed her eyes. Noon. The analysis confirmed. Victor's account had been accessed through a virtual device from outside the Lumen network, but using the same session token he used during the May 2nd meeting. Meaning, someone had cloned a temporary access signature, a technique known only to a very small group within the system. Eleanor sighed. So, that means... We have another person on the inside, Belle finished, but without Victor, they might have already succeeded. All eyes turned to Victor. Do you know who it is? Victor hesitated, then nodded slowly. I can't prove it, but I suspect one of the three people sitting here. 2:40 p.m. As Belle wrestled with a crisis of trust, Camilla's confession video passed 3 million views online. More importantly, former Crestline employees began sharing their own stories. An Asian American pilot recalled being reassigned to less visible flight paths because she didn't inspire passenger confidence. A black security officer was suspended for being unfriendly when all he did was remind a passenger to lower their voice. Belle's story. I was no longer alone. 5:15 p.m. In the digital archives on Lumen's second floor, Belle quietly accessed the system using the elevated clearance Eleanor had granted her. She typed an encrypted string. A log entry appeared. The account responsible for cloning Victor's token, admin.temp.b.reynolds@lumen-sec.org. Belle frowned. B. Reynolds, Blake Reynolds, Senior Cybersecurity Officer at Lumen. The man who wrote internal reports exposing Crestline. The man who had defended Belle on television. The man who once said, "There's nothing worse than a system that hides rot under the mask of morality." So why? 7 p.m. Belle entered Eleanor's office, holding a printed copy of the system log. Victor was already there, silent. You didn't betray me, Belle said, but you protected the person who did. She placed the page on the table. Victor closed his eyes, voice low. I owe Blake my life. 3 years ago, when I was investigating Crestline from the inside, he hid my identity. If it weren't for Blake, I wouldn't be alive to sit here. Eleanor looked at both of them, then said slowly, So now we must choose. Keep him, and risk that he still has weapons hidden. Or cut him off, and lose our last pipeline inside Crestline. Belle stood. There was no longer hesitation in her eyes. Call Blake here, but not for a private talk. Call him to appear with me on live broadcast. Eleanor frowned. What are you planning? If he once protected Victor, then let him protect me now, under the light of the entire world, if he's still real. 8:45 a.m. The 12th floor recording studio at Lumen headquarters had been turned into a quiet battlefield. Cameras were fixed at 3 angles. 2 chairs were placed against a neutral tone background, one for Belle, one for Blake Reynolds. No backdrops, no banners, no slogans. Just one truth waiting to be named. 8:59 a.m. Blake entered. His face was hard, salt and pepper hair neatly cropped, his charcoal gray suit immaculate, almost emotionless. He nodded to Belle as if they were 2 strangers about to begin a corporate meeting. Belle sat first, hands resting on her lap. No notes, no prep questions. The cameras rolled. 9 a.m. Nationwide live stream began. Belle opened with steady resolve. I'm Belle Jenkins. I was humiliated at Gate 42 by a system that believed silence equals obedience. But I'm not here today to retell the past. I'm here to confront something far more terrifying than hatred, betrayal by those we trust. She turned to Blake. You were one of the first to publicly stand against Crestline, but internal data shows it was your account used to manipulate that trust. So, who are you? Blake sat motionless for a moment. Then he sighed, nodding lightly. I'm someone who lived between two worlds, and I'm ready to tell the truth. 9:05 a.m. Blake began his revelation. In 2018, I was assigned to Crestline's internal compliance team, but instead of investigating wrongdoing, our real task was to compile a list of potential whistleblowers, then deal with them through corporate policy. I followed orders until one of the people I monitored took their own life. The room went silent. I left Crestline, joined Lumen, but I knew Crestline never sleeps. They had people everywhere, and when Belle's story exploded, I got a call. Not a threat, an invitation to come back, if I helped twist the truth from the inside. 9:08 a.m., Belle asked, "And you refused?" Blake nodded. I misled them. I created the system scratches to make it seem like I was cooperating. But at the same time, I rebuilt the map of how Crestline still manipulates media from within. He placed a USB drive on the table. Inside is a list of media outlets secretly funded by Crestline, internal coordination emails from the Reputation Reclaim Task Force, and a name. One that might help us understand who's truly behind all of this. 9:11 a.m. Belle read the name aloud. Leonard Walsh. The country froze. Leonard Walsh. A name that had only appeared in passing on financial documents. Now Blake pulled up the supporting files. Wire transfers routed through 5 shell corporations. Campaign plans for #DoubtBelle traced to Leonard's private server. Meeting minutes between Leonard and 3 other CEOs discussing removing Belle from the victim role before she becomes a standard of justice. 9:17 a.m. The media erupted. While the live stream was still ongoing, the New York Times published a feature using Blake's evidence. Networks canceled scheduled programming for breaking news. Leonard Walsh, unofficial chairman of Crestline, suspected mastermind behind racial complaint suppression campaign. 9:35 a.m. Crestline responded. A company spokesperson told the press, Mr. Walsh retired in 2022 and has no current ties to Crestline's executive operations. But Belle instantly cued a recording in the live studio. A voice call from Leonard just 2 weeks prior. I don't need to keep this airline alive. I just need to make sure its image doesn't die because of a girl in a hoodie. 9:45 M. The narrative shifted completely. #expose. Walsh rose to global #1. Crestline stock dropped 17% in 1 hour. Legal groups began preparing what could be the largest class action lawsuit in U.S. aviation history. 11:10 a.m. Belle met privately with Eleanor. The elder woman remained composed, but her eyes were sharp as glass. You just cornered Leonard, and you know he's not the kind to go quietly. Belle nodded. So what do we do? Prepare for the final strike. 1 p.m. Victor received a security alert. A confidential internal document from Horizon Systems, the firm temporarily managing Crestline operations during the crisis, had just been leaked. The contents? A draft media damage control strategy involving Belle, dated 9 months before the incident ever occurred. They'd anticipated a scandal. They had a blame reversal plan ready in advance. But the signature at the bottom of the document wasn't Leonard's, it was Camilla Rhodes. Title at time of signing, Executive Liaison, Corporate Risk Containment, Crestline Airways, 8 a.m., a June morning at New York City Hall. Hundreds lined up outside before dawn. Not for a politician, not for a celebrity. They came to witness the first public hearing against Crestline Airways, broadcast live nationwide. This was no longer about an airline. This was a moral trial, where the public demanded the truth back. 9:15 a.m. Belle entered the hearing chamber. No lawyer by her side, no bodyguards. Only her, a crisp white shirt, hair neatly tied back, steady eyes, and unwavering steps. The entire room rose as she walked in, not for fame, but for the fact that she stood when no one else did. 9:32 a.m. The special committee read aloud a 14-page indictment against Crestline Airways and related parties, including manipulating media to distort public response, suppressing internal complaints for over 9 years, orchestrating an ethical counter-campaign targeting Belle Jenkins. Notably, the signature of Camilla Rhodes. The room held its breath. TV cameras zoomed in on Camilla's face, seated 3 rows behind Belle. Her hands gripped the chair. Eyes down. 10:05 a.m. Belle was invited to speak. No script, no printed notes. She stood facing the room. I've endured months of attacks, labels, and silence. From people who believed history would forget a black girl in a hoodie. But they forgot one thing. I don't need history to remember my name. I just need it, not to repeat itself. And if today I can do anything to stop the next generation from having to say, it's happening again, then I accept everything they've done to me. 10:17 a.m. A commissioner asked her about Camilla Rhodes's. Were you aware that the person who apologized to you was also the one who signed the plan to bury you from the start? The room went silent. Belle looked at Camilla. Their eyes met, not in hatred but in truth. I knew, and I didn't forgive her because she apologized. I forgave her because I refused to let hatred be the last thing they leave in me. A long, deep, weighted silence. 10:43 a.m. Camilla was called to testify. I don't deny signing the plan, but I signed it thinking I could contain it, minimize the risk, not knowing it would be used to destroy a human being. I was wrong, not just because I got caught, but because I looked into Belle's eyes and saw myself there. The girl I once was, standing alone in a room full of prejudice, with no one standing beside me. 11:30 a.m. The ruling was issued. Crestline Airways' operating license was permanently revoked. Corporate assets redirected to human rights, education, and civic trust recovery funds. Leonard Walsh and 3 senior executives indicted for conspiring to erode public trust. Camilla Rhodes was not criminally charged, but permanently barred from all future corporate leadership roles. 1 p.m. Press conference outside City Hall. Belle stepped out. Reporters swarmed. Someone shouted, "Belle, after everything, do you feel like you've won?" She paused, turned back. If justice is a battle, no one truly wins. We only get to choose. Stand in the light, or become part of the darkness. 2:42 p.m. Eleanor and Victor took Belle to a small park where a newly erected statue stood, not of Belle, but of an unknown woman, arm raised holding an old flip phone, as if capturing a moment the world tried to ignore. A bronze plaque beneath it read, "Dedicated to those who chose not to stay silent." Belle stood quietly, didn't cry, just breathed deeply, and for the first time in months, she felt alive, not just surviving. 8 p.m. Belle's final live stream on her official account. I'm about to disappear from social media, not because I'm tired, but because I was never meant to be a symbol. I want to leave space for others, those still waiting to be seen, to be heard. I'm Belle Jenkins, and I stood. 1 week later, at a small high school in Alabama, a brown-skinned girl with curly hair wearing a hoodie stood up in class when her teacher mispronounced her name. My name is Aria, and I don't need anyone to correct it for me. I'll correct it myself. The class fell silent. Then one student clapped. Then the whole room. Aria sat down and opened her phone. Her wallpaper was a photo of Belle standing at gate 42, eyes unwavering. A new generation had begun. The message and real-life lessons from the story of Belle Jenkins. The story of Belle Jenkins is not merely a chain of dramatic events, from a moment of public humiliation at Gate 42 to a hearing that brought down an entire airline empire. It is a quiet declaration about the value of human dignity, the courage to confront injustice, and how one ordinary individual can move the hearts of millions. 1. No one is too small to make a difference. Belle wasn't a CEO. She wasn't a lawyer. She was just a young girl, wearing a worn hoodie, silently standing in an airport with a first-class ticket that people refused to believe was hers. But she didn't stay silent, and that act, a single phone call, a steady gaze, sparked a chain reaction no one could have predicted. The lesson doesn't lie in Belle's luck or position. It lies in her choice. The choice not to be silent when insulted. The choice not to shrink beneath the judgmental eyes of a crowd. And most importantly, the choice to keep standing even when everything around her was collapsing. 2. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's standing, even while trembling. Many looked at Belle's composure and assumed she was strong by nature. The truth was quite different. She trembled when she made the call. She stayed quiet when yelled at. She didn't lash out because she knew even one misstep could erase her value in the eyes of others. But within that trembling, Belle stood still. She didn't react the way people expected, and in doing so, she forced them to confront the nature of their behavior. Courage doesn't always shout. It sits quietly, with purpose. It is the silence that forces the abuser to look inward, where there's nothing left to justify. 3. Justice doesn't begin in court. It begins with how we treat strangers. Crestline didn't collapse just because files were leaked. It fell because the truth was planted the moment everyone at Gate 42 chose to look away. Justice doesn't require us all to be heroes, but justice does require us to be accountable for our silence. When we choose not to step in, when we walk past without speaking, when we think, it's not my business, that's when we help cement the foundation of injustice. If even one person at Gate 42 had said, she did nothing wrong, maybe everything would have turned out differently. Forgiveness is not erasing the past. It's refusing to let it control the future. One of the most powerful moments in Belle's journey was learning that Camilla, the woman who once stood beside her, she was also the one who signed the plan to bury her. And Belle didn't scream. She didn't publicly shame her. She forgave. Not because Camilla deserved it, but because Belle deserved to be free from hatred. In Belle's definition, forgiveness is owning your soul again. It's not letting rage write your next chapter. It's not letting the past narrate your future. 5. True change comes from empathy, not victory. Belle didn't ask for a title. She refused to become a symbol. She didn't want the spotlight. She didn't need to stand on a podium. She just wanted one thing. I just want history not to repeat. And with that single desire, she created a ripple. A girl in Alabama stood up to correct her name. A classroom clapped for someone who spoke the truth. Other companies reviewed their hiring systems, internal processes, and how they view workers with names they don't recognize. Belle didn't want to be at the center, and because of that, she became the center of a historic shift in consciousness. 6. When one person stands, others begin to believe they can. Belle's story didn't end with a big check, a new title, or a national speaking tour. It ended with a passing of the torch. From Belle to Aria, Malik, Lena, Marcus, people who had never been named before, but now know their voices carry weight. And that is the final and perhaps deepest lesson. When you stand, you don't just rise alone. You lift the eyes of an entire generation that has been told to keep their heads down. Final thought. The story of Belle Jenkins is proof that change doesn't need to begin with the most powerful person in the room. It starts with the one willing to take the first step. You don't need the loudest voice. You just need the courage to speak when no one else will. You don't need to be on stage. You just need the bravery to stand when everyone else bows their heads. And if you've read this far, you're already ready to place your hand on your heart and ask, what would I have done if I were at gate 42? Your answer to that question, it is the truest reflection of your character.